Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Job Search TV. From time to time, I talk with people who are in different careers about what it's like to be in that career. And today I'm going to be talking with Dan Shalev, who's an information architect and management consultant who solves problems for financial services organizations at the nexus of information architect and governance, risk, and compliance, politely called GRC. Dan, thanks for making time today.
Hi, Jeff.
Great to meet you. And let's start diving in because we've got a lot to cover. So what is it that you do anyway? What does this information architect nexus of GRC translate into in language that if there were recruiters watching it, they could actually even understand?
So, rolling from the beginning, I am a management consultant. I help my clients solve problems that they would have difficulty solving on their own. I do that in a very specific field, which is nexus of two disciplines. One is information architecture, which is the discipline of understanding what is the information that the organization has, how it needs to be consistently organized so that it can be used to make business decisions. And the next of that is a particular business domain inside the financial services world called governance, risk, and compliance. And so describe that, and since risk management is the discipline of understanding what are the potential things that can happen and being able to systematically and consistently review them to make decisions. Do you want to do something about them? Or do you want to accept there's potential for something to happen? Allowing for the fact that risk, the flip side of risk, is also opportunity. And so, in summary, I help my clients solve problems, mostly in this particular business domain, to be able to make business decisions using their data, which I help them understand and organize to facilitate that decision making.
Cool. So what sort of duties or responsibilities do you have in this role? And I'm sure you could go on for a long time, but we don't want people to click away. So if you can give people a brief synopsis of what they are, that'd be great.
Very simply, as a consultant, I take on a problem. The projects that I work on are defined deliverable projects. Define up front, here is the problem. Here are the deliverables that will be produced, the end state we're going to take the client to, what we're going to create for the client within a fixed period of time. My responsibility, either on my own or within the team, is to get the client to that place where they have the deliverable or the deliverables we've agreed that they will have, or create them myself for them.
Deliverable is what the outcome is that you're going for?
It could be a deliverable is something they have. I create a model for them, or they come to a place. There is an exercise that they are doing. They cannot complete it on their own, and I help them complete it. So they get to an end place they could not get to on their own. We define it up front. There's a fixed time to do it. And my responsibility, job responsibility, is having taken that on, is to do whatever it takes to get the client to that place that we've agreed we will help get them to.
Gotcha. So just for the viewers, I want to make sure they understand the areas that you work in. So I'm going to go sequentially just to make sure that they understand what it is that you do. So could you briefly explain what information architecture is?
So let me just contrast with data architecture. Data architecture is the discipline it's a technical discipline in the information technology world of creating database and data warehouse solutions and designing effectively pieces of software to allow businesses to use their data to conduct their business or to make decisions. Information architecture is an analytical discipline to understand what is the information of the business, understand how it should be organized, what are the types of information that you need. For example, you're a bank, you extend loans to customers, you need information about people. Who are they? How do you find a person in the real world? How are those people known in the real world? That's what the information architect does, as opposed to data architecture, the technical solution of creating a technical solution to house that information once you've defined what that information is that needs to be understood and held.
Gotcha. And the next area is data governance, which is a part of your background too.
So what I just described is, you could think of that as a conceptual exercise, understanding what is the information you need to hold and how it needs to be organized. But that doesn't actually help the client practically solve a problem. That doesn't actually let them do something new they can otherwise. You have to build a solution. Describe data architecture, part of that, building a solution. But data governance is another part of it. When you put that technical solution in place, everyone has heard the expression, garbage in, garbage out. If you do not put good data in, you will get bad data out. You will not get good information to make decisions. So data governance is the discipline of putting in place processes, tools, and controls to make sure that the data that eventually is made available at the end of the solution is consistent, timely, accurate, and complete. In other words, usable and fit for purpose.
Gotcha. And the third term that I'd love you to define is GRC, or governance, risk, and compliance.
So GRC is the business domain that I mostly help my clients in. I have a professional background being a practitioner. So risk I already described as the discipline of understanding all of the potential events that can happen that can adversely impact you. You think of that as basically a role of a manager. A manager is supposed to know what are the adverse events that could happen and make decisions. Do you do something about it, or do you live with it because there's opportunity? But when you go to a large enterprise, there are many, many such potential events. So risk is the discipline of understanding those on a consistent basis and be able to create frameworks to compare apples with apples and make consistent decisions. Compliance is the discipline of looking at finding those risks as potential events where you have to do something about them. You don't have a choice because someone else has decided you have to do it. Either the government, Congress has passed a law, for example, saying you must do something. A regulator has passed regulation, you say you must do something about it. Or the industry has decided. So you don't have a choice, but you still have to identify all of those. So same as risk, except the decision has been made for you. You just have to find out where you need to make those decisions. And governance provides the plumbing to bring it all together. Governance is the processes to identify those risk points, bring people into rooms to make decisions, make sure they see those dashboards and reports to drive decision making, create policy for it, and do it in a way that is not unduly burdensome to the business so that managers can actually get on with running the business and not spend all their time dealing with this.
And it begs the question, how the heck did you get into this? This is quite a hybrid, or I'll use the non-technical term, hodgepodge.
It is.
Of things. How did you wind up doing this kind of work?
It's a story almost of two careers. This bizarre thing in the United Kingdom where I grew up, many people in the US leave college and then they become lawyers with no intention of actually practicing law. The equivalent in the UK is people become chartered accountants. Not quite the same as CPA, a lot of risk control. It's a background, makes you understand control in an organization. Control controls what you practically do about risk. So I came to the financial services world with that background, and I moved into a risk world, and I did roles relating to risk, relating to market risk, operational risk, and then other forms of risk. My other story is that I moved into this world and I looked like someone who was not scared and terrified of technology. And so I was moved into a stream early in my life in the banking world of learning structure analysis, working on projects to get systems in place and make them do what they need to actually do what the business wants. And I learned structure analysis techniques, which then come together in the risk world of the last decade or so, the recognition has been a major thing that holds back risk is data integration. Data is disparate, organized in very, very different ways, in silos and very old systems. And the big challenge is bringing it all together. And I happen to have that background of structured analysis. I knew what data modeling was, and it's led me on a journey that has made me become actually an information architect. And I now have a defined, repeatable methodology for creating quite complex models to understand how to solve those integration problems in the risk domain.
Fabulous. What kind of problems do you help your clients with?
So there's a range. I'll take two examples. One end, the problems whereby I have a client who has a desired goal of somewhere they really want to be to really improve what they do. And I help them get through certain milestones in that process. An example is a risk function for an entire bank wants to develop a big data capability. Big data is a buzzword in business as a whole. Most people, the best way to understand it is a company like Amazon. Amazon can be really full of, rather than as a retailer, as a data company. It brings data together about its customers, about its suppliers, to enable data-driven decision-making. And everyone would love to be able to make decisions like Amazon does. But if you're a bank, it's nowhere near as easy. Amazon's a new business. Banks sit on decades of old technology, and organize that data is hard. So one example, at one end, aspirational. I get a call asked to take the business on a journey to understand the data of the bank as a whole and how to organize it consistently, regardless of the business it comes from, the system it came from, the geography, organization. The other extreme is very practical problems. We've been written up by an auditor. We have been written up by a regulator. We don't have a capability the regulator tells us we need to have. We've agreed to a deadline. We're not going to make that deadline. Can you help us get to that place?
Mm-hmm.
So that's essentially the range. It's help them realize maybe their dreams, in the way you could say, take away some of their nightmares.
Fun way to put it. Do you tend to work on your own or as part of a team or some combination?
It varies. Generally, it is a combination. The more conceptual work, in terms of my own team, tend to work in a relatively small team from the firm that I work for. Minimum, even if I'm doing a modeling exercise of my own, it's always good to have a second pair of eyes. So I will always walk in with a second pair of eyes. Other projects, more at the take away the nightmare end, the deadline, bring in more people. But the key thing is there's always a team, because the best way to get a result that is really useful to the client is to use the skills and the expertise of the people in the business at the client, facilitate them, their much, much greater knowledge, because there's no way I am ever, in the time available to the project, going to know as much as they do. So the key to success is always to find those people, bring them, form them into a team to work together with them and make it a collaborative exercise to get to the end place. And of course, it means that when the project is over, there are people there who've been part of the journey and actually own what you've built.
Interesting. So if I'm getting this correctly, you'll partner with another consultancy. You'll also partner with internal users in the organization who know far more about what they need and how things are done than an outsider can do. Did I get that right?
Precisely. So we'll bring in a team, maybe of 1+1 however consultants, or bring in a team of 2, 3, 4 people for something that needs to be rushed. But there'll always be that element of bringing in a reasonably large disparate team inside the client. Often people understand the problems, understand what's been thought through before, understand why something may not work.
Gotcha. So I know about your background, and I recognize that your current work isn't with one of the big brand name consultancies. So I'm curious, how is it that what you do similar and different to what they do?
So the similarity is the projects are the same. The nature of the problems that we're solving are the same problems as those big names do. The difference really comes down to the team approach. The big firms are big, they come in with a reasonably large team, they attract very, very smart, highly qualified talent, and they're able to deploy a large team to move very fast. And for many situations, that is a very good model. The difference is, what we're doing is, as I described, it's the model of bringing in a relatively small team of experienced people like me, who are able to diversify and understand the business, have even done the job of the client, able to hit the ground running, make an impact. It's a small number of people, and leverage the resources of the client, leverage those team members, make them the large extended team. Not necessarily saying it's the better model, it's just in many cases it's more appropriate. In some places, the model the big firms have is the more appropriate model.
So in some cases, it pays for the firm, or makes sense for a client to hire the army of people in suits coming in. I'm caricaturing here, with their briefcases, dressed in a uniform manner. They've got 40 people coming in to attack the problem, and that's not you. You're going to come on with a platoon. By comparison to a full-fledged army. And sometimes
I call it even a volunteer detachment from the platoon.
Much better put. But you're coming in smaller numbers, but still getting results.
Absolutely.
Interesting. And from a time standpoint, I imagine that in the type of engagements you're taking on, you're more nimble and able to respond more quickly than the big monoliths can. Am I right about that?
Well, to be fair to them, it depends on the situation. Generally, yes. This is a more flexible model. You have a smaller number of people, more experienced. You can start working from day one. But my model does require a reasonable time commitment of the client, of the members of their team. Mm-hmm. To be fair to the big guys, when the client has a situation, they need something done and given the amount of time, and they cannot free up any of their people's time, then the model of the big guys is an appropriate model to bring in many people to create capacity the client has not got. If, however, the client can free up a percentage of time of the right people, then I would argue that the model that we have, the smaller firm model, is a more nimble model that will result with a more appropriate result, and one more likely to live on after we've left.
Gotcha. As an external consultant, it's different than being an employee. What do you judge the differences are as the external resource versus the member of staff?
Well, on the positive side for me, I work with people working for the client, and I see them living a life I did once upon a time, pulling out, I used to pull out a BlackBerry in the morning and see like 200 to 300 emails. And the benefit is I'm able to focus on one problem. I can do something they can't do. I can focus on that one problem. I don't have 200-300 emails about many different things to focus on, so I can focus on the one problem. The flip side, though, is, I suppose, consulting. Maybe I'm in the process of my with hybrid background. There are things you learn doing the actual job that do not necessarily become apparent when you take the typical consultant role of going down, down, down from 50,000 feet. But the most important difference is, much as I will identify with the client, much as I will make sure their interest is my own and be focused on solving their problem, ultimately it's not my problem, it's theirs. I am their agent, I'm doing something on their behalf, but it is ultimately their problem, their solution. At the end of the day, I will leave and move on to another problem. They live with the solution that we create together, and they are the ones who own it.
Gotcha. And I have to imagine if they had internal staff, that would be true too. But they're just pulled in lots of different directions because they're internal staff.
They may be pulled in different directions, but also the skill set is not necessarily there. So you would not, for example, in a risk of compliance function, necessarily find people who are also, for you almost never find people who are also information architects. You will not find that inside a risk function of even a large bank. You will find data architects inside a technology architecture function. So the other difference is bringing in a skill set that is not going to exist inside the people you recruit to run the function on a day-to-day basis.
Interesting. So could you describe one or two difficult situations that you've been brought in to handle? And I'm going to get milk and cookies now because this is story time.
It's a story time. So what I actually alluded to was the client, repeat client, someone I have a very good relationship with, who is beginning responsible for the technology and strategic and data and technology plan for the risk function for a very large bank. The objective is to realize that Amazon-like big data functions so that anyone is able to look at the data of the enterprise and ask questions and answer them consistently and not care where the data's come from, not care what system it came from, how it was organized, what organization, what business, what country it came from, just be able to do what Amazon does. So the problem, of course, is that is very much unlike what the data looks like, because these are systems that have been around for decades, that have a given data structure for decades, and built on. No one is going to change that data structure of those multi-decades old legacy systems.
And those systems slow down and degrade with time as a result of layer upon layer upon layer being built on top of the original core.
This is true, but there are sexy technology solutions for that, to take copies of the data, bring the data to a different place, to a provisioning platform, there's a term data lake, to create a data lake using new technology so you can physically access it fast. But the problem is, you look at that data lake and what is that data in the data lake? If you're an analyst who's got a new unique question and you want to find data to ask the question, is where do you find it in that data lake? So the problem I got asked to do was create a model, a language to describe the data you'd find in that data lake, and describe how it should be organized and how it should be combined to answer those questions. So the thing I did, rather than, maybe this is the reason the client came for me, in an old established discipline like credit risk, and basically this is banking. The job of a bank is to manage credit exposures with its customers. Rather than look at those systems, in fact, I didn't look at the systems at all, because there's an established way of thinking. Start with, fine, we want people to be able to answer questions. We worked with the senior executives to actually define what are those questions. What are those questions you want to ask you cannot easily answer? Or if you're able to answer them, it actually means you've got a team of people spending weeks in Excel and Access databases and other things to massage data to eventually, a few weeks later, when the data is stale, give you the answer to your question.
Interesting.
So the way I helped them was identify those questions and then work with a team of subject matter experts to identify inherently, you're starting from scratch, what are those concepts you need to define those questions, and what are the valid ways to combine those concepts to be able to ask them and get good answers back.
Fabulous. That's one situation. Do you have another one that you could describe?
So I'll give you the extreme of take away somebody's nightmare. A situation of one bank has been acquired by another bank. And when there's an acquisition, there's a due diligence process to understand all the risks people are taking on. And in this case, the due diligence had not been complete, and they'd missed a major regulatory issue relating to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which all publicly listed companies have to comply and be certified by their auditors in compliance with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Mostly Sarbanes-Oxley, people think about financial reporting is actually about controlling risk. And understanding what your risk and having the capability to make decisions. And to make this even more fun, the acquired company was in Brazil. Brazil, Portuguese. So the deal closed at the end of December, and that's exactly the problem. Jeff, you just got it. Closed at the end of December, and the auditors turned around and said, we've got to do this by the end of the year, otherwise the whole of the bank, the acquiring bank, will no longer be compliant. We've got to take them there by the end of the year. And of course, it's January, and in February is Carnival.
Right.
So I can't even talk to anyone till the end of February. So what I got asked to do there is land in Rio, a pleasant place to do work, and meet many, many managers and explain to them the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and what it means on a practical basis, what their jobs would look like in a year's time if they were compliant. And then came the fun cultural part of it, where everyone's actually incredibly polite. I keep giving people opportunities, since I'm speaking to them in not their first language. You take some breaks now and speak to amongst yourselves in Portuguese, and then ask me some questions afterwards. Everyone is really, really polite, doesn't answer, and insists and carry on speaking in English. So what I then do is do a couple of weeks questioning people, gathering information so I understand what are the main exposures, what are the decision-making capabilities they need. And then we do reviews. And I've also identified their local champions there who've known these problems have always existed, have got solutions, who really want to close them and actually are happy they've got these skills. And then we have these review sessions. So I've pulled my team together, the people who've always wanted to solve these problems I'm now giving a license to, people who have to do the work. And my sign of success is we do these review sessions and people start understanding the work that they need to do is they started yelling at each other in Portuguese. 2 weeks in politeness for me of it being in English. And that was the point at which I realized I have my team. I succeeded in creating my local team because my guys were being forceful enough that they were aggravating their colleagues enough, not aggravating, but making their colleagues feel stressed enough that their colleagues would start to yell at them in Portuguese and forget about being polite and sticking to English for my benefit.
I love that. You have them hooked when they start, everyone's yelling at one another. Got it.
Not in the spirit of animosity, but just
determination.
Stress, realizing how much work they'd have to do in a very limited amount of time. And these people are already working 6 days a week and very long days.
Wonderful. I love this. What kind of decisions do you tend to make?
So, in a way, I don't make decisions because it's the client's problem. They need to make decisions. I help them make the decisions. So
you ask a better class of questions so that they can make the decision?
Precisely. So my decisions I make is over the process. What's the journey I take them along to present them with decision points and allow them to make decisions about where they want to go. Now, I'll be fair. So like we're talking about the work I actually do as opposed to how I necessarily make the client feel at the time. I have a view about this. I'm doing analysis, a lot of thought, creating analysis to what is the place that makes most sense for them to go. So maybe I'm going to be leading, the process involves leading the witness to a certain answer. But really, the answer to the question of decisions is, what's the process? What are the steps of the journey? Who to bring in what place? How to present the information? Who to involve? And maybe the most important thing is, how far can you take the client? Especially, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go from the Stone Age to Rome, and I'm not saying my clients are in Stone Age, but you cannot go from the Stone Age to Rome in one giant leap. There's a concept in the technology industry of a maturity curve, of becoming more and more capable in a number of steps. You only go up a maturity curve one step at a time, or part of a step at a time. So the real decisions over the substance I'm making is, what's an appropriate place to go to that has a good chance of success given where the client is now, but it keeps the door open for them to carry on that journey on their own to get to the most ideal place once the initial work is done.
So what happens if you're struggling to resolve a problem? Like, how do you handle that?
So one reason is never walk in on your own, even though it looks like a project that I could do my own. Don't do that. Bring someone along that you can speak to in confidence, formally someone's QA, but someone you can speak to in confidence, and so like, be comfortable, not afraid to be completely wrong. The other thing is, there are the soft skills of working with the client. Make sure you actually create those relationships of trust with the client, whereby you're not afraid to be wrong in front of the client. In fact, many of the facilitation techniques that I use to be able to do things really, really fast, where I don't have the army, the big guys, are actually involved, asking the client to catch me out, to see, where am I wrong? Where is the analysis wrong? So we've broken the analysis, it provides an opportunity to fix stuff. It's the ideal place where we're comfortable being wrong. But ultimately, there's a point you have to bring in the big guns. And that's where the important thing is bringing along solid sponsorship. Executive sponsorship. Make sure the person who is paying the bills, the resources working on your team and the client ultimately are responsible for, feel responsible for, or their ultimate bosses really care about the opinion of such a person. Make sure that person is coming along as your sponsor, is behind your approach, and you have a relationship, you're able to walk into that person's room and come to them to bring a decision point to them.
What does a typical day look like? Heavy doses of caffeine or no?
It can happen. It can happen because, as I said, you ask, what am I responsible for? I'm responsible, having taken on projects, almost like you think at the beginning of Mission Impossible. This is your mission, should you accept it?
Right.
There's a statement of work, and we have accepted it. I'll be honest, the last project I took on, I read the statement of work afterwards. Last big engagement. And how did I take this on? Why did I choose to take this on? Because I essentially said, this is a project being executed by the client, not my project. I have certain specific deliverables that are my own, but also there was a responsibility to get the client to the end place if they're not able to do it on their own. So something like that involves a lot of cat herding to get people that you have no direct control over to go to the place you want them to be. And it does involve a point, you're right, existential terror, which of course you need to never let the client see, as you need to find the way to get something. And you may realize at some point, as I did that time, you took something on you did not anticipate at the beginning. Other days can be very well-ordered, well-structured days, can be days of, maybe the better way to answer that is, what's my typical week like?
Okay.
Ideally,
so tell me what your typical week is like.
So consulting traditionally involves travel. You go to the client, you go to the client. The client does not come to you, especially if there are many more of them than there are of us. And so my typical week will involve a number of days, I would say very intense people days, either holding sessions, facilitating sessions, holding walkthroughs, training sessions, or even facilitating sessions for different people at the client to speak to each other and just make sure those exchanges happen. So they're very intense people days. And then there are the days, the non-travel days, the days back in the home base in the office, which are very quiet, analytical days that I'm spending with my nose to a very large screen, working through the complex analytical issues to walk back into the client where things need to be understood, decisions need to be made. I walk back with a number of well-ordered, same as you just did. You prepared for this interview by preparing a series of questions. You're not just making them ask me questions at the top of your head. As people walk into those sessions, everything is well thought through. They have a number of decision points people can get their head around and make sense for them to discuss. So it's a number of days to spend a lot of time with people, a number of days locked up in a room.
Yeah, that describes it very well. You're traveling to a client for some amount of time, and then from there, you're spending time with the client to understand their needs, make sure you're on point with what needs to be done. They're making decisions. You're herding the cats at that point, so that from there you can travel home and get your nose to the grindstone and do what needs to be done. Is that a good summary?
Exactly, and do it in an uninterrupted way. Hopefully I've scheduled things well that it neatly divides up. And of course, that time when I'm back is when the client's actually getting on with actually doing their job and their day job.
Which they like doing from time to time. What gives you the most stress?
What gives me the most stress is taking on a problem that stress is essentially being responsible for doing something you can't actually do. So it's the greatest stress is that point of realizing taking something on, it needs to be done by date X, resources Y, but it needs Y plus. Or Y plus amount of my time, or responsible for doing something and have not yet worked out how to do it. So it's those points of realizing the resource, my resource and others' resources available to get to a certain milestone, it's available is less than what is needed. Those points to overcome, there's always an alternate approach. If I realize at that point I don't know how to get to a place, it's always a good process. It's a reason to bring another person along to think it through. One can develop an approach to get to that place, and then the points of stress are resolved. But those are the great stress points. Realizing we have not got a defined path yet, or we have not got sufficient resource using the path, the process we thought we were going to use.
I just have a few more questions. You still got time?
Absolutely.
Great. So what sort of things give you the most satisfaction or dissatisfaction about the work that you do?
So greatest satisfaction is walking out at the end, having done a good piece of work that is actually going to change the way people do things. Doing smart thoughts, doing smart thinking is great. It's fun, but ultimately it's pointless if it doesn't result in change.
Right.
My satisfaction comes from getting the client to a new place, giving them a new capability, giving them a new way of doing things, a new tool, results. So fun information architecture is a fun analytical discipline. Love doing that conceptual work. But what gives me great satisfaction is actually taking the client somewhere where they're actually using it and do something different. Maybe the greatest dissatisfaction is that I'm only along for part of the journey. I have long relationships with some clients. Maybe I don't come along for the whole journey continuously, but I've popped in for engagements along the way as they're moving to the journey of building Rome. But ultimately, I have to be able to let go, walk away. It is their problem. They own it. I'm responsible for taking to an agreed point. It's not my problem. So I try and address it by making sure the client is in the best possible place to get to where they need to be. But yes, sometimes it's unsatisfying that I can't go along for the rest of the journey.
Gotcha. So I've got a magic wand here. And with the magic wand, I want to be able to change anything about your work that you would want to have changed. So what would those sorts of things be, or what would that sort of thing be that I could change with my magic wand made by whoever it is, Bic?
So the magic, Jeff, if you volunteer to be my fairy godmother, what I would love is, I told you a situation whereby my client comes to me at the beginning of that journey. They want to go to be Amazon, have that decision making, and she's coming to me at the very beginning of that story. Really, if you could wave the magic wand, as the other clients come to me with their nightmares, I would love to be there earlier for them before it's a nightmare. That's to be able to, because at that point, you can't change the problem. The problem is, as it's written on the page, the commitment has been made to the regulator to do it by this date and do exactly that. I would love to be there earlier in the journey to be able to define a problem and be able to define it early in a way that actually helps them get the most value out of their efforts, create a new capability that gives them more business value rather than just gets them to tick in the box and gets them out of jail.
Gotcha.
Figuratively, at least.
Understood. Hopefully it's only figuratively. And thus being influential earlier in the process.
Or being brought in earlier.
Got it. Thank you. Dan, is there anything I haven't asked you about through my lack of skill or preparation that you'd want to bring to everyone's attention about the kind of work that you do?
You know what? I don't know what the question was, but if you asked me to explain the nature of consulting,
please.
What makes one successful at it? And I said there are hard analytical skills that I have that I've developed over the journey. And I have this background as a practitioner that I actually have done, in many cases, the client's job. So I have used these analytics to make decisions. I have had to create them on my own, or had a team create them for me. But actually, the most important thing to be successful in consulting is to understand that this is a trust business. To win clients' trust, you're acting in their best interest. And actually understand, much as frustrating for you, you don't own the problem, they do. Therefore, the path to success is not getting to the end of the project where you make a presentation and get a great big round of applause. And it was generally when that happens, the analysis after you leave keeps the door open. The ideal place is you take the client along for a journey and they genuinely feel they are the authors of the solution. And if you can make them feel that, then what you have built will live on after you've left. And that is how you actually create value for the client.
Beautiful. Dan, thank you. How can people message you if they have questions, interest in retaining or hiring you? How can they get a hold of you?
The easiest way, find me on LinkedIn, Dan Shalev.
Spell that for them, please.
Dan, Shalev, Shalev. You can get me by email, dan.shalev@Bifrost Analytics, Bifrost, Bifrost analytics.com, or on the web, www.bifrostanalytics.com.
Fabulous. And folks, I'll be back soon with more advice for you, more interviews, more ways of helping you find work. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I'm a career coach who helps people play big. And what I try and do really is career and leadership coaching, helping people with transitions in their career, helping with hiring more effectively, managing and leading, workforce related issues. And with me, the easiest way to reach me is through my website, thebiggamehunter.us. If you're interested in my coaching, there's a button on the homepage where you can schedule time for a free discovery call or go right into coaching in one form or another. I would love to help you. Folks, I hope you have a great day and take care.